Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Chinanjala Shalakaya Saksvimritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Shri-Chaitanya-Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svamrupakadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeyam Shri-Yuda Padakamalam Shiram Vaishnavamsa Shri-Rupam Jagajatam Sakana Raghunatam Tam Tam Satjivan Sadvaitam Savadvitam Parajana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sakanalita Shivshakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandha Chatpate Gopesha Goprakanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanashva Vishvana Sutadevi Pranamama Haripriya Vakra Kalpta Vishakri Pasan Vavisha Patnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. So today we will continue with chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottam Yoga. And we will discuss today first verses 8 to 15. So in the previous lesson, we are at the beginning of the 15th chapter. So Lord Krishna describes to Arjuna a banyan tree. And this is the banyan tree of this material world in which we are entangled. And Lord Krishna made a point that one should cut this tree with knowledge and attachment. But to get out of this tree, to liberate oneself, one must be free from false prestige, that one must understand one's eternal position, that remove all the lust, anger, greed from our heart, and become freed from the duality of happiness and distress, the happiness and distress of this body. And finally surrender to the Supreme Lord. And then you can go back to the spiritual world. Because the spiritual world, Krishna say, there all the planets, they are illuminated from themselves, that there is no need of sun or moon, no electricity, and one who goes there never comes back to this miserable material world. And then Krishna came to the point, Mamaivam sochi veloke jiva buddha sanatan, ma'anasastindriyani pagatistani karsati. The living entities in this world are my eternal parts, part and parcels, and they are struggling very hard with the senses, especially the mind. So Krishna has now defined who we are. We are a part and parcel of Krishna. But unfortunately, we are all, for the moment, transmigrating from one body to another. And why are we transmigrating from one body to another? Because we want pleasure, sensual pleasure. That's the reason. And Krishna will say, one who is a transcendentalist, he can see that very clearly. But blind materialists, they cannot see these things. That so we should therefore know Krishna's position. He's our maintainer. We are the maintained. That so he's maintaining the universe, is maintaining also us. And one should understand how Krishna is the compiler of Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. That's a summary of the section we will now discuss. But first, the bad news. We are transmigrating. So can someone read a verse on the board, please? Please.
शरीरं यद्वाप्नोति यच्चाप्योत्तरमेश्वरः गृहीत्वानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात्. Translation: The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to make another. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you. So that means that we are the living entity in the spirit soul. We can choose which body we will get in the next life. That how do we choose that? By how we act in this life. That because the subtle body carries all your conceptions under the guidance of the super soul to the next body. Srila Prabhupada explains that more detailed in the purport. That yes. Of course, getting bodies means struggle for existence. That's what Lord Krishna in the previous verse said. They are struggling very hard with the six senses, which includes the mind. That so we have a minute independence. That the change of one's body depends on us. That's our independence. That if one makes one consciousness like that of a cat or a dog, you will get a cat or dog's body in your next life. That and if your consciousness is fixed on godly qualities, you will become a demigod. And if one is in Krishna consciousness, one goes to the spiritual world, Krishna Loka, where one associates with Krishna. So our present body and our present activities are the background of the next body. That so the subtle body carries the conception of the body, and then it develops another body in the next life. So the process of transmigration from one body to another and then struggling in that body is called karshati, struggling for existence. And then in the next verse, more details are given. Text 9. Someone can read 9, please.
श्रोत्रं चक्षुस्पर्शनं च रसनं घ्राणमेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्चायं विषयानुपसेवते. Translation: The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Hare Krishna.
So our original consciousness is pure. But it becomes adulterated, it becomes changed by association with material qualities. And then one gets a corresponding body. That so it's Srila Prabhupada writes, consciousness is originally pure, like pure water. But if you mix with the water a color, then it changes. Similarly, our consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association with material qualities. You remember material modes, previous chapter, these teachings of Lord Krishna to Uddhava from the Bhagavad-Gita, 10 ways to change your modes. You remember that? These different ways by which scriptures we are studying, by that so our consciousness becomes changed. That's the point. And our real pure consciousness is Krishna consciousness. But if your consciousness is changed, then you get a certain material mentality. And according to that mentality, you get a body in your next life. And there are 8,400,000 species. From these 8,400,000, there are 400,000 human forms. Well, higher forms. Within these 400,000, also the demigod forms and so on are included. So this Lord Krishna says, the foolish person cannot understand. Someone read text 10, which is on the screen.
उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढानानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषा. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Hare Krishna.
So this is one of the 12 aims of Shastra study. Jnana Saksha, seeing to the eyes of the scriptures. That it requires a great amount of knowledge. That it requires understanding Bhagavad-Gita and similar literature, which we are hearing from the bona fide spiritual master. So those who have developed spiritual knowledge can see that the spirit soul is different from the body, and that how changing its body, how one changes the body, and how in each body we are enjoying in different ways. That so such a person also can understand why we are suffering and struggling. That so we should come out of this and be Krishna conscious and liberate ourselves from all these bodies and go back to the spiritual world. That text 11. Text 11. Yes. Yeah, can someone read 11, please?
यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्ति आत्मन्यवस्थितं यतन्तोऽपि कृतात्मानो नैनं पश्यन्ति चेतसः. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to.
So Srila Prabhupada explains there are many so-called yogis that who proclaim that they are liberated, but they don't know really what self-realization. That's different. Liberation and self-realization are different things. Liberation is realizing I'm not this body, I'm Brahman, I'm spirit. But that's incomplete, because one does not know yet who one is. One has realized I'm not a body, that's nice. But then one must realize, who am I? And Krishna said in text 7 that Mamaivam Seshive Loke Shiva Bhuta Sanatana. We are his eternal parts. Because we are his eternal parts, it's natural for us, for the part, to be connected with the whole. And that connection with the whole is devotional service. But many yogis are blind in that matter. They cannot understand what self-realization is. So we are performing devotional service in practice. We may have not yet realized, but we start to act as a spirit soul. And that selfless act to please Krishna purifies the heart and will bring us to the platform of liberation and beyond, towards self-realization. These so-called yogis cannot understand the process of transmigration of the soul. It's only the Bhakti yogas who are engaged in pure devotional service, they can understand things as they are. Okay? And then Lord Krishna started to explain how all living entities, how everything is depending on him. So can someone read 12?
यद आदित्य गतं तेजो जगत् भासते अखिलम् यच्चन्द्रामसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विधिमामकम्. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me.
Yes. So the living entities, Krishna says, they depend on the sun, moon, fire for their existence. By appreciating how the sun, the moon and fire are emanating from Krishna, once Krishna consciousness begins. So that's the beginning of understanding. Everything comes from Krishna, everything is depending on Krishna. So that's the beginning of establishing knowledge. By understanding what Krishna explains here, that everything comes from him. It's his splendor. So, yes, the splendor of electricity, of fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of God. So we are all parts and parcels of the Lord. And the Lord is here giving a hint how we can go back to the spiritual world. So by understanding how everything is connected with Krishna and controlled by Krishna and depending on Krishna, Srila Prabhupada at the end of the purport. Therefore, sunrise, fire and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So all energy comes from the sun. Even fuel. Fuel is energy that comes originally from wood, that from coal, that is transformed later into fuel. So all energy comes from the sun. And the sun, the light of the sun depends on me, Krishna says. If one understands that the light and splendor of the sun, moon and fire are emanating from Krishna, then our Krishna consciousness begins. That by the moonshine all the vegetables are nourished. So without the mercy of the sun, there cannot be the moon. And without the mercy of fire, the fire cannot be there without help of the sun. So without the help of the sun, moon and fire, no one can live. And that comes from Krishna. So these are some thoughts to provoke our Krishna consciousness. The living entities depend on the sun, moon and fire for their existence. By appreciating how the sun, moon and fire emanates from Krishna, one's Krishna consciousness begins. Krishna continues. Text 13. Someone read 13, please.
गामविश्य च भूतानि धारयामि अहम् ओजसा पुष्णामि च औषधि सर्वा सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः. I enter into each planet and by my energy they say stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables.
So Krishna enters the planet, but he does not only enter the planet. He is also Vishvatma. The Atma, the soul of the universe, enters the universe. He is Paramatma. He enters every living entity. And even the atoms. He's in the atoms, between the atoms, everywhere. Because of his presence within the moon, all the vegetables become palatable. Very nice. So when there's a spirit soul, so a living man can float on the water. But when the spirit spark is out of the body and the body is dead, it will sink, Srila Prabhupada says. Similarly, all the planets are floating in space, and that's due to the entrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. So human society is working on living comfortably and enjoying food, but it's the Lord who supplies it. It comes from the Lord, that He gives us everything. So realizing that gives a boost to our Krishna consciousness. Text 14, Krishna continues. So, can someone read, please? Text 14. Someone wants to read?
Aham Vaisvano Bhutva Praninam Devamashita Pranapana Samyukta Pachanyanam Satalveda. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuffs.
So Krishna says, I'm the digestion. So we eat and then we digest, but we don't know how it goes. And why it happens? It's all Krishna, the super soul, is arranging it. The Super Soul Krishna is making our heart beat. We miss one beat, finished. That Krishna makes our blood circulating to the veins. That so Krishna does in previous verses that he does not only not only creates the food, the bodies we require to live, but he also digests it after we have eaten. So that is what Krishna is saying here. So he's doing everything. So the fire is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Agni is a representative. So Brahman is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. So the living entity is not independent in his eating process. He needs the help of the Supreme Lord to get foodstuff, and the Supreme Lord digests what we have eaten. And then we come to text 15, which is a key verse of Bhagavad-Gita, which we all should memorize. And that is on the screen here. Can someone read text 15, please?
I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
Yeah, thank you. So this is an important verse, that we know that the Lord exists in three features: Vadantatat, Tatvavitas, Tatvan, Jnanam, Atvayam, Brahmeti Paramatmiti, Bhagavan iti Sapyate. The Vedantists concluded that the Absolute Truth has three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And not only that, Krishna says, I'm the Paramatma in everyone's heart, and for me comes knowledge, forgetfulness, and remembrance. So whatever we remember, whatever we forget, whatever we know, it's given to us by Krishna. It's good to know. You do devotional service and sometimes you don't remember something. You can pray to Krishna, please. Let me remember, Krishna, I need it for your service, if you so desire. See what happens. That's interesting. But Krishna says, yes, I'm not only in the heart of every living entity, that I'm not only Brahman, I'm not only Paramatma and Bhagavan, but I'm expanding also in the form of the Vedas. So Krishna is in our heart, and we may not know what we have done in our previous lives, but Krishna reminds us, he gives us the reactions, so that he reminds us. He gives us intelligence to work and to forget our past lives. Good that we forget our past lives and all the frustrations we went through. If we would remember, we would not be able to live. That's too much frustrations. In your previous life you were a fly, and then an elephant came and If you remember all these things, it would be madness. But Krishna gives us also knowledge in the Vedas. Vedasa sarvayameva Vedya. I'm to be known by the Vedas. Vedanta Kit Veda Evacha. I'm compiler of the Vedas. I'm the knower of the Vedas. So he gives knowledge of the Vedas, how to live in this world and go back to Godhead. That's the knowledge Krishna gives. So the living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the directions of the Supreme Lord, who is the witness of all his work. So the Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. So the Vedas offer knowledge of what? Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, knowledge about us, knowledge about our relationship with Krishna. These are three divisions of the Vedas. They are called Sambandha Jnana. Sambandha Jnana means is knowledge about Krishna, about us, and what is our relationship. If we have that knowledge, we can re-establish our relationship, Sambandha. And then, not only Sambandha, it gives also Abhideya, how to act in that relationship. And what's the goal of that relationship? That's the third part, Prayojan. Acting with devotion, love. That's the goal to that. So the Vedas give direction to people so that they can organize their life to go back to Godhead. Because the Vedas offer this, and Krishna, in his incarnation as Shailavyasa has compiled Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra is all spiritual knowledge in a very cryptic way, aphorism. Therefore it's so short, aham brahmasmi, that atato brahma jihnas, that adi janmasya, everything comes from the absolute truth. That you need a commentary to understand it. And that commentary is Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra is Janmadhyasya. And the first verse of the Bhagavatam is Janmadhyasya tom vayatita itas satis abhihyas farat tena brahmaritaya adkev kavaye moyanti atsuraya. So this explains what is the source of everything. That's the Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended in last life. You just get a new body. So that's not bad. A new body is more practical. An old body, a lot of trouble. So it's good to get a new body. Krishna's mercy. But the body is given to enjoy and to suffer in the world and that suffering is determined by Krishna within the heart according to our past deeds. So it's done under the dictation of the supersoul in the heart. But Krishna gives us also the opportunity to understand the Vedas. So why does he compiles the Vedas? Because he wants all living entity individually understand Krishna. Who is Krishna? So by Vedic rituals, discussion of Vedic philosophy and worship of the Lord in devotional service is attained. Srila Prabhupada writes, therefore the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction to understand Krishna, and not only to understand Krishna, also the process of realizing him. So the purpose of the Vedas is to understand the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are here defined. So, by studying the Vedic literature, one can understand our relationship with the Supreme Lord. And by that, we can approach Him and attain the supreme goal of going back home, back to Godhead. So we have heard characteristics of the spiritual world. Krishna has described that in the spiritual world there is no need of sunlight, of moonlight, of fire or electricity. But in the material world we need these things. And Krishna says, you need these things and I'm the source of these things. Yes. So, purpose of the Vedas is Krishna. That is important. Yeah. Of course, we hear that, but then the question is, how can we perceive the presence of the Super Soul? How does Krishna make us forget our past lives? How can we consciously take advantage of the direction of the Super Soul? These are interesting questions. So one can say, yes, I want to follow the direction of the Super Soul. What are the directions of the Super Soul? The problem is we are not in contact with the Super Soul directly, because our conscience is covered by lust, anger and greed, and therefore no contact. Or the contact is indirect. If you do good things, like a mother served the child out of love, the mother feels satisfaction within the heart. That's Krishna within the heart. He said that is good. But if someone steals or the sinful activities, he will feel guilty in the heart. And that's Krishna who says, this is not good. But we cannot talk directly with the Super Soul. But usually, if intuition comes from within, it is our mind talking to us. And that's not so good. We should not listen to the mind. But Krishna gives us Guru, Sadha and Shastra. And they are explaining the same as the Super Soul. These are the Super Soul's directions. It's the same thing. So if you become purified, Krishna from within will give you the same directions. So we have to check always with Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So why does he make us forget our past lives? Already explained. You would not be able to enjoy in this life if you remember your last life. Narada Muni, he remembered his past life, but he had activated his spiritual body, his eternal spiritual remembrance. That's what happens. Chad Bharat also. Chad Bharat became a deer. He was in the body of a deer, but he remembered is last line, the body of a deer. He remembered that, and then he became, after a deer, he became Jat Bharat, the son of a Brahmin, and he remembered again his previous lives. But Bharat Maharaj, when he was meditating, he was deviated by the attraction to the deer, and he was neglecting his spiritual sadhana, but he was already beyond liberation, bhava. By that, he got, his remembrance became eternal. But that's different. This is for the advanced. But we have heard in the 4th chapter, Krishna, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, you and me have gone to many lives together, but you forget your previous lives, and I do not, because you change body, and I don't. It's by changing bodies that we forget. That's the point. That if you move from one apartment to another, you forget the previous one, and the new one you have to check everything out the first time. It's like changing our residential quarters. That's so. After concluding that Krishna says that he's the goal of the Vedas and the compiler of the Vedas, the Lord summarizes Vedanta. And these last 3 verses of this chapter, they are also called the Trishloka Gita. That Vedanta means conclusive statements on the position of the Supreme. So in the purport of verse 15, Srila Prabhupada spoke already about Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojan, but now from 16 to 18, he will give knowledge about our relationship with Krishna, Sambandha Jnana. So these 3 verses from 16 to 18, they are also called Sloka Gita. So Krishna, we know, is the knower of the Vedas, the compiler of the Vedas. So in these 3 verses, he's assisting the soul in transcending material existence by summarizing the essence of the Vedas in three slokas. And that's called Vedanta, Vedanta, the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas. So verse 19 then will be about Abhideya Jnana, and the last verse is about Prayojan, the goal. Abhideya means how to engage in our relationship. So the problems of our material existence, they are due to weakness of heart. We desire to lord over material nature, and it leads to attachment and a sense of proprietorship. This is mine. So we have heard the first 5 verses of this chapter. They are describing the process of freeing oneself from this weakness of heart. And the rest of the chapter, from 6 till 20, is about this Purushottam Yoga, with at the end, verse 16 to 18, Sambandha Jnana, verse 19, Abhideya Jnana, verse 20, Prayojan, the goal. So let's now first hear verses 16 to 18. I will just first read myself the verses. Tvamima Purushaloke Kshara Sakshara Evasha Kshara Sarvani Bhutani Kutasto Kshara Uchate. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and infallible, In the material world, every living entity is fallible. In the spiritual world, every living entity is infallible. Text 17. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Personality of God, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Because I'm transcendental, beyond the infallible and infallible, and because I'm the greatest, I'm celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as a Supreme Person. So we must know who Krishna is and who we are. We are the infallible or infallible. The infallible are in the spiritual world, we are the fallible, we are fallen in this material world. But then there is the Supreme Lord. And whether fallible or infallible, we have a relationship with the Supreme Lord. Infallible are conscious of that relationship. The fallible, they are forgetting Krishna. But we have to become infallible again. That's the process of Krishna consciousness. So that's re-establishing our relationship. So the living entities within the material world are fallible, and those in the spiritual world are infallible. But being one in purpose with the Supreme Lord, oneness does not mean that we don't have individuality, but that there is no disunity. So oneness in purpose. So means oneness means that we are the soul is cooperating with Krishna by serving Him with devotion, cooperating. That in the introduction of Bhagavad-Gita we have heard Srila Prabhupada using this word, describing the jiva is the cooperator. We are the cooperator with Krishna. And the Lotus Paramatma maintains both classes of living entities. But Krishna is above it. He expands Himself as the illuminating Brahma Jyoti and localized Paramatma. So this is essential knowledge for our Sambandha, Jnana, Sambandha. Without that knowledge, you cannot re-establish your relationship. If you think you are equal to the Supreme Lord, no relationship. It's not possible. Yes. So let's go back. Lord Krishna says a living entity can be divided in two classes, the fallible and the infallible. So when the living entity comes in contact with the material world, they are called jiva or jiva bhuta. And then they are fallible. Ksara sarvani bhutani, they are fallible when they are coming in contact with the material world. But those who are in oneness with the Supreme Lord are called infallible. Oneness, Srila Prabhupada said, does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They agree to serve Krishna. They agree to the purpose of the creation. The purpose of the creation is to satisfy Krishna. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no things as creation. Spiritual world has never been created. It's eternal. We are also never being created. We are eternal. So, yes, but since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is, Supreme Personality of Godhead is the source of everything. So that conception is here explained. So as long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. And matter is changing, so living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter, therefore there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, dwindling, vanishing. So these are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, no death. So changing its body. Therefore, they are fallible. In the spiritual world, they are not changing body. They are liberated always in oneness with the Lord. They agree to be the cooperator, serving Krishna. But above all these innumerable living entities, Krishna says, there are some who are liberated, and also above all these conditioned souls, and above all these liberated souls also, there's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he maintains all. Nitya Nityananam Cetana Cetananam is the greatest eternal among all eternals, and is the greatest living entity among all living entities. So the purpose is that among all living entities, both conditioned and liberated, above there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead who maintains them and who gives them the facility for enjoyment in different kinds of work and situations. But no one can surpass that Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conditioned and the liberated, no one can surpass him. So it's clear that the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. So now in verse 19, that is the Abhideya Jnana, 19, right? Yamami vamasam udochanati purushottam sarvavid bhajati mam sarvavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages in devotional service to me, O son of Bharat. So that's the Abhideya. If we understand that, then we understand who we are, and then we can become self-realized. Because then only we can start to act as a spirit soul in the service of the Supreme Lord. And that is the science of how to engage in devotion service. Abhideya, that especially Nectar of Devotion concentrates in Abhideya, how to engage in devotion service. It's our manual for the Abhideya, how to engage in devotion service. 64 items of devotion service, 64 items to do. So that anyone who knows Krishna is actually the knower of everything, because everything comes from Krishna. So but the perfect knower, he doesn't waste time. He engages directly in devotional service in Krishna consciousness. So we must hear about Krishna from the right source. Srila Prabhupada stresses this hearing in the purport. He says, simply to hear like hawks is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad-Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna. According to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna knows the purpose of the Vedas, and no one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. So we must understand that we are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But yes, but one must hear from the right person, through the parampara. Otherwise, one can speculate for hundreds of thousands of lives and not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that we must surrender unto Him. All this speculation for so many years is a useless waste of time. In conclusion, understanding Krishna, his topmost position, his supreme position, that's the best of all knowledge. And one in full knowledge engages in devotional service. But if we don't accept devotional service, this knowledge has no use. Because the goal is Krishna, and the goal is described in text 20. Iti goyatamam sastram, maybe we can put it on the screen also. Idam uktam mayanaga, eta buddha buddhimansya, kitta kritya sabharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, the sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. So this is the substance of all revealed scriptures. Understanding that these scriptures are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if we understand this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will engage in His service. And we can become free from these modes of nature, transcend them like we heard in 1426. So devotional service itself is a process of spiritual understanding. That's very important. That it's not by scholarly endeavor. And because this devotional service takes place in the spiritual energy, the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That also significant is that Lord Krishna here, Maya Anaga, is called Anaga, means is sinless. It is said that Srila Prabhupada writes, "O sinless one means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it's very difficult to understand Krishna." But devotional service is so pure that once one is engaged in devotional service, it comes automatically to the states of sinlessness. So the point is, we have to surmount this weakness of heart, Srila Prabhupada says. Because this weakness is we have the tendency to control over material nature. So the second weakness of heart is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature. It becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. You want to control, you become attached, and you think this is mine. These are the problems of material existence. In this chapter, the first verse describes the process of freeing oneself from the weakness of heart. And the rest of the chapter, from the 6th verse to the end, discusses Purushottam Yoga. That we heard. By that, we are at the end of chapter 15, and after the break we start chapter 16. And so we will now
I have a question.
Yes, do we?
Hi Krishna, yeah.
Yeah, please.
Is my voice clear? You are able to hear me, Manoj?
I'm hearing you, yes.
Okay. At many places Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, first of all we hear in the 9th chapter that the most confidential knowledge in 19.2. But then from ninth chapter to till the 18th chapter, at a different space, different points, Krishna says this is the most confidential knowledge, or this is more confidential than whatever I have told you. So I mean, it's a bit confusing that I mean everything is all confidential, or what does Krishna means to say by this?
Yeah, so first of all, the ninth chapter is called Devotional Service, and Devotional Service is the most confidential knowledge. That's for sure. And then he says further, this is the best knowledge, because every knowledge.
Pardon?
I don't, yeah, the communication is. But so in the ninth chapter, Krishna says devotional service is the most confidential knowledge. And then in these chapters that we are going through, which is about jnana yoga, of jnana leading to bhakti, knowledge leading to bhakti, Krishna says, yeah, this in each chapter he says this knowledge can liberate you, and therefore it's the best knowledge. So the best knowledge is what can liberate you. And there are many ways. There are many ways Krishna explains to attain that liberation. He gave us the 13th chapter, knowing the difference between Prakriti, Purush, and Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnana, Jnayam, 6 subjects. If we know how everything works, we can liberate ourselves from our entanglement. We realize we are not a body, and Krishna is the doer, and the soul does nothing. Of course, that may take a while for you to realize that. And then the 14th chapter, Krishna says, yes, you first have to come to goodness and then transcend goodness by devotional service. That's the best knowledge, because it leads to devotional service. Best knowledge is all knowledge leading to devotional service. That's the point. And in the next chapter, we will start after the break, developing godly qualities, or developing spiritual qualities, or developing demonic qualities. If we develop the spiritual qualities, we will also be able to liberate us. It's also the best knowledge, because it leads to devotional service. And in the 18th chapter, Krishna will become more specific. In the 18th chapter, Krishna says, now I will give you confidential knowledge, more confidential knowledge, and most confidential knowledge. And that is his final words. He says, confidential knowledge is 1854. That Brahmabhuta Prashanatmana Shosti Nakankshati Samsavesha Bhuti Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So the confidential knowledge is understanding that we are Brahman, spirit soul, and that we realize when we become peaceful, Prashanatma. And then, Brahmabhuta Prashanatma, then one stops lamenting or hankering for things in this world. And then one becomes peaceful and realizes that one is a spirit soul. That's the first level. That's confidential knowledge. But more confidential knowledge is not only knowing that we are spirit soul. It's 1861 is more confidential knowledge. It's a higher level. And Krishna says there that Ishvara Sarva Bhutnam Riti Sarunatistati Brahmyam Sarva Bhutanam Yantarutayi Maya. I'm seated in everyone's heart as a super soul, and I'm conducting the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on a body made of material energy, a yantra. So I'm seated in everyone's heart. Knowledge of the super soul is more confidential, because the super soul controls material nature, and we are not the doer. Super soul does everything. Maya attraction and prakriti. Krishna says, I'm controlling material nature as the super soul. But then the most confidential knowledge, Krishna says, gives in 1865-66. Manmana Padmapakchamachi Mam Namaskar Mama Vaishya Satyate Patichana Priyosime. Always think of me, become my devotee. Offer worship to me. Offer your obeisance to me. In this way you will come to me. Sarvam Pishyam Mamkam Samvacham Tvam Sarapabhyam Moksheshyamachsa. And then surrender unto me, follow my instructions. That's the most confidential knowledge. So you have these three levels. But all knowledge that leads to liberation is also the best knowledge, because it leads us to devotional service. Therefore, it's the best knowledge. But finally, you have these three, that Brahman realization, Paramatma, and Bhagavan realization is the highest. And that's explained in the 18th chapter. So, does that help? Yeah, you have to unmute.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, good.
Thank you,
Then
Maharaj.
we will now have a break of 10 minutes. Let's see, it's now 8 past. We resume at 20 past 8. And then we will see the first 9 verses of the 16th chapter, the divine and the demoniac natures. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So, Hare Krishna, we will continue with chapter 16. In chapter 15, we heard about these three going up and down, that so in this tree we go up and down. Sometimes we are close to the root, Nagaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, where Brahma lives. And sometimes we are down in the tree, the hellish planets. So in the 16th chapter, Krishna speaks how we go up and down in this banyan tree. You have the divine branches, which are the upper planetary systems, and the demoniac branches, which are the lower planetary systems. And Krishna explained in this 16th chapter. First, he explains divine qualities, the qualities that elevate one on the tree and ultimate give liberation. And then he explains in details in this chapter, the rest of the chapter practically, the demonic qualities by which one goes lower on the tree and ultimately to hell. So he also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. So he begins with, in chapter 16, by explaining the divine qualities that so let's I'll read the Sanskrit first, which is on the screen. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Samsute Jnana Yoga Vyavastiti Dhanam Dhamma Sajakya Sasvatyaya Staparyavam Im Satyamako Dastyaga Santya Paishanam Dayapate Sadolaptvam Mardavam Rirasapalam Deyaksham Titichacham Adronati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Devim Apyatasya Bharata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion of honor. These transcendental qualities of Son of Bharat belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So we see here Lord Krishna is describing these 26 transcendental qualities. And we should cultivate these qualities according to different statuses of social order, social and occupational order. That's the Varnashram. So the first qualities, first line, Abhayam Sattva Samstutir, Jnana Yoga Vyavastiti. These are the qualities of a sannyasi. If you should a sannyasi, when one applies for sannyas ministry will look at that. Does this candidate have these qualities? Abhayam Sattva Samsudir. That Abhayam, fearlessness, and striving for purification of one's existence and cultivation of spiritual knowledge. These are the qualities of a sannyasi. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about sannyasi in a few paragraphs. But before we go to that, I want to see here. I just have to look up something on my computer because I want to bring a chart on the screen and share it with you. So I just VTE Just bear with me a moment. I get it on the screen. Just get it from my computer. Okay. Files. This 2. Chance, I have it here. It's starting. Okay, I will share it with you. So this is what you have on the screen now. These are these 26 qualities which we are discussing here in these verses. That we have the first 3. They are qualities of a sannyasi. That so Srila Prabhupada speaks about that. So a sannyasi should think, even if I live in the darkest region of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. So this conviction, Srila Prabhupada said, that is fearlessness. That state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. So that's a qualification of a sannyasi. And that, of course, then there is the second quality, purification of one's existence, sattva samsuddhir. There it is said, to purify his existence, a sannyasi must follow so many rules and regulations. That most important of all, a sannyasi is strictly forbidden to have any intimate relationship with a woman. For he is even forbidden to talk with a woman in a secluded place. Lord Chaitanya is an ideal sannyasi, and he was at Puri. His feminine devotees could not even come near to offer their respect. They were advised to bow down from a distant place. This is not a sign of hatred for women as a class, but it is a stricture imposed on the sannyasi not to have connections with women. One has to follow the rules and regulations of a particular state of life in order to purify his existence. For a sannyasi, intimate relationship with women and possession of wealth for sense gratification is strictly forbidden. And then Srila Prabhupada speaks about Shota Haridas. Shota Haridas looked lustily on a young woman, and Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he at once rejected him from the society of his personal associates. Of course, Lord Chaitanya is a super soul in everyone's heart. He knows what Haridas Thakur was desiring, and that was the problem. But another feature for a sannyasi is jnana yoga vyavastiti. He must be constantly be engaged in cultivation of knowledge. Why? Because he must distribute his knowledge to householders who have forgotten their real life of spiritual advancement, Srila Prabhupada writes. It's a duty of a sannyasi. If he is actually advanced and so ordered by the spiritual master, he should preach Krishna consciousness with logic and understanding. And if one is so advanced, one is not so advanced, he should not accept the renounced order of life. That a sannyasi or one in the renounced order of life must be situated in fearlessness, sattva samsudhir, and jnana yoga. Yeah. And then the next items we see here on the screen: charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice. These are, Srila Prabhupada writes, these are items meant for the householders. Charity is meant for the householders. That's the duty of a householder. Charity. That devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, I'm just married. What's my duty as a householder? What's my relation with my wife? Srila Prabhupada said, you ask your wife to cook. After cooking, you offer it to the deities. And after it's offered to the deities, you go out and you call 3 times, prasad is ready. Everyone who wants to come, please eat. And then you serve all those who want to eat. And after that, you can eat. So that's... But of course, the devotee said, yes, but Prabhupada, I think you did not understand me. What's the relationship with my wife? I'm just married. Srila Prabhupada said, you ask your wife to cook. And after cooking, you offer it to the deities. And then you go outside and call 3 times. Everyone who is hungry should come. Should come and take prasad. And the devotee was not satisfied, and he asked a third time, but Prabhupada, what's the relationship with my wife? And he said the same thing a third time. So that means married life is not meant for sense gratification. It's meant to cooperate together in Krishna consciousness. And the first duty is charity, distribution of prasad to all those who need. That was in the Varnashram system. So charity is meant for the householders. When Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was with disciples, it was a parikram in Vrindavan, and he saw that his householder disciples did not give to the beggars. He would chastise them and say, it's your duty. So the householder should earn a livelihood by an honorable means and spend 50% of their income to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That's the greatest charity. Charity should be given only to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That is charity in the mode of goodness. Good. That 50% at least. And then Dharma, self-control. Householders must control their senses. Although he has a wife, a householder must not use his senses for sex life unnecessarily. There are restrictions for the householders even in sex life, which should only be engaged for the propagation of children. If he does not require children, he should not enjoy sex life with his wife. Modern society enjoys sex life with contraceptive methods or more abominable methods to avoid responsibility of children. This is not a transcendental quality, but it is demoniac. Srila Prabhupada writes. Then sacrifice. That's the next point. Forms of sacrifice performed by the householders. So that was the tradition in the Vedas. All householders should perform Agni-hotra sacrifices, and Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, they should perform Agni-hotra sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literature. So this is everyday svaha, offering oblations in the fire. But Srila Prabhupada said, But in this age of Kali, the best sacrifice is Sankirtan Jahya, and the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That Srila Prabhupada said many times, you have a family, in the morning and the evening you should chant Hare Krishna together. So, Aradhya Gadadhar, please.
Maharaj, can you elaborate more on the meaning of the sacrifices? What are they? Can you tell some detail about them?
Yeah, in the Vedic system, Agni Hotra sacrifice had to be performed by the householder daily. And they must maintain the fire the whole year. That it is said in the Vedas. So that was their daily duty. And when I was in India 25 years ago, I did parikram, and I came. We were somewhere not far from Raval. Raval is a place where the Vrishabhanu found Radharani. There's a beautiful temple there, and we stayed there overnight, and we stayed with householders, and they were doing every day this Agnihotri sacrifice. They were doing that every day. But in this age, it's not practical. So there is a higher sacrifice for this specific for this age, and that is the Sankirtan Jahya. Of course, we do also sometimes sacrifices which are similar. When we have the samskaras, initiation, we have a sacrifice. But in the Vedic times, they did that daily. At least the Brahmins did that daily. That's what I can say about it. Much more things about to say, technical details of the Agnihotra sacrifice. They are in the Vedas. The Vedas, you have 4 Vedas: the Rig Vedas, Atharva Vedas, Yajur Vedas, and Sama Veda. But each Veda has 4 parts. The first is the Samhita. The Samhita is the text. And then you have the second part of the Vedas, is the Brahmanas, is how to pronounce the hymns correctly, because that was very important during a sacrifice. And the third part are the Aranyaka. Aranya means forest, because for each Veda there is a sacrifice. Describes and how to perform that is in the Aranyaka. Aranya, which spoon you have to use, how to build the Agnihotra sacrifice area, and how to do all these things. That's described there. And then the 4th part is the Upanishads, the knowledge to the Vedas. So each Upanishad corresponds with a certain Veda. Like we have the Shios Upanishad is one of the Upanishads related to the Yajur Veda. And that's technical, but if you are interested, you can find all the descriptions there of these Jahyas, and Agnihotra is part of that how to perform it. But like I said, Prabhupada is not recommended. He says for this age, the chanting of Hare Krishna, and it's easy. It doesn't cost anything, because these sacrifices are expensive. you have to take ghee and all these fruits around and anyway. Does that help?
Yeah, Maharaj. And Maharaj, like it's specifically mentioned for bowing for the Grihastha class. So does that mean that, is it something in relation to getting rid of sins that are committed in the household life? Like in trying to earn money. What's the significance of that? It's only
The
mentioned for Grihastha.
significance of the sacrifice is because in the fire, through the mantras, appears Lord Vishnu. They are worshipping Lord Vishnu in the fire. And you will read that in the Bhagavatam because Kashyapa Muni is a mystic yogi, he meditates, and sometimes he's away, he's in samadhi, and his wife, the Aditi, I think, she performs the sacrifice on his behalf while he's away, because once he came back, that's in the Bhagavatam, and he saw that Diti was troubled and said, what happened? Why are you morose? Did you not offer daily the oblations into the fire? He's saying. That's a verse in the Bhagavatam. So he followed his Agnihotra sacrifice. We can see the tradition is there for householders in the Bhagavatam. These are references. Good, we continue. That is, then we have austerity, simplicity, non-violence. So this in Sanskrit is austerity, Svadhyayas tapa aryavan. Svadhyaya, study of Vedic study. Now we come at the brahmachari, duty of the brahmachari, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity. Three, so Svadhyaya, Vedic study is meant for the brahmacharya, or the student. Brahmacharis should have no connection with women. They should live a life of celibacy, engage their mind in the study of Vedic literature, and cultivation of spiritual knowledge. That is called Svadhyaya. Tapas, austerity, is meant for the retired life. So the austerity is for the vanaprastha. One should not remain a householder throughout his whole life. He must always remember that there are four divisions of life: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas. So that's an instruction for all of us. That once you are 50 and the children are grown up, that you are free from the children, then you must take vanaprastha. Man and wife can take together and go to holy places and serve. But we should all take at least vanaprastha. So after grihastha householder, one should retire. If one lives for 100 years, one should spend 25 years in student life, 25 in household life, and 25 in retired life, and 25 in the renounced order of life. Of course, so it indicates here sannyas should normally not be taken at a young age. But Srila Prabhupada made exceptions, that to get the movement going on, they needed young sannyasis. So these are the Vedic. This is the Vedic discipline. So and if one vanaprastha means one undergoes austerity for body, mind, and tongue. That's tapasya. So the entire varnashram system is meant for tapasya, Srila Prabhupada. Without tapasya, austerity, we cannot get liberation. So that's important to understand. that we must perform tapasya, sometimes fasting on Ekadashi and so on. So then, as far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, whether he is in his brahmacharya, ashram, grihastha, vanaprastha or sannyas, one should be very simple and straightforward. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. That means every living entity must be in a body for some time. The animals, they must be in a certain body for some time, and then they go to the next level, a higher animal body, also for a number of lives, and then again a higher. So that's a progression. And stopping that progression, Srila Prabhupada said this is violence. If one kills an animal to eat it, it's violence. Because one is stopping the progressive life of a living entity. So, Srila Prabhupada writes, at any rate, when there is ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking one's progressive life. The animals are also making progress through their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal to another. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy the palate. And then Srila Prabhupada speaks about Satyam, truthfulness. So mostly when one lies because otherwise, if the truth comes in at light, then I will miss a benefit. So you may lie to get a job and not present the real facts. So one lies for personal interest. So Satyam means one should not distort the truth for personal interest. So Shruti means that one should hear from the authority. One should not construe some interpretation for his personal interest. And then the next quality is akrodha. Akrodha means to check anger. If there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of passion and lust. As one who is transcendently situated should check himself from anger. So that is a great test. Try not to become angry at any cost. Sometimes difficult. But if one becomes purified, it will be possible. Then Ri means that one should be very modest. One should not perform some act which is abominable. No sinful acts. Achapalam, determination means that one should not be agitated or frustrated in some attempt. So that's the determination of a yogi, unfailing in success or failure, but I will go on with my service, whatever happens. So there may be failure in some attempt, but one should not feel sorry for that. He should make progress with patience and determination. Nectar of instruction. Utsaya Nisaya Daryat. That Nisaya Daryat, with patience and determination. The word Tejas. So Tejas, that's for the Kshatriyas. That means power. Kshatriyas are always very strong, able to give protection to the weak. And then you have Saucham, cleanliness. Cleanliness, but Srila Prabhupada said cleanliness of the body, but also of the mind. That cleanliness means also for mercantile people, they should not deal in the black market. Nati manita, not expecting honor. That's for the Sudras, Srila Prabhupada says. That they are considered the lowest, but they should not be puffed up with unnecessary prestige or honor and should remain in their own status. So these are all 26 qualities that... So I have a question here in the chat by Gaurav. Do grastas need to give 50% salary to their whole life? A devotee told me that Rupa Goswami gave 50% only on his retirement, not only to his own life. Can you please clarify? Of course, Rupa Goswami retired and then he distributed his wealth like this. And after that he had no income anymore, nothing to give, because he became Sannyasi, a Babaji, that gave everything up. But if you have a regular income, yes, 50% of your profits, Srila Prabhupada says, that should be given to support. But that can in different ways. That at house, yeah, you have to shop for the deities, and then you offer, and then you distribute as part of the 50%. Srila Prabhupada is very specific here. You should give it to the Krishna consciousness movement for the preaching. So Grihasthas should invite people in their house and preach to them and give them prasad. And that's also a part of it. So there are different ways to realize this 50%. So I'm going to share another thing. Okay, these are 26 qualities of a devotee here. And we will see many of these qualities, 20 qualities of a pure devotee. Yes. And it's divided in 3 parts: art of giving, art of being, and characteristics of the person. So that's how he behaves towards others, towards oneself, and these qualities. Very interesting. That qualities of a devotee. Yes, concrete. Good. There are any questions, please?
I think mic of Asana Krishna is unmuted.
Maharaj, you are host, you can mute him. Asana Krishna's Prabhu's mic, you can mute because you are host.
Yeah. Don? Any question?
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, are these the devotees' qualities that you've shown, Maharajji? Are these kind of? I mean, it's I think a very naive question. Are these either or or mutually exclusive, or how many you need to have to be a devotee?
That's mentioned in the
I was just going to say,
Srimad Bhagavatam. Yasyasti Bhaktir is 5:18, no, 5:18:12. Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavati Penshana Saverkunas Tatra Samastesura Rav Bhaktasi Kuturmat Kuna Manorit Nasti Dav Turbai. Prayers of the residents of Shambudvip. All the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all these qualities will develop in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion to Supreme Lord. So they will all manifest. And we can see Srila Prabhupada, he had all these qualities as a pure devotee. But that's a pure devotee. Not so pure, he will have certain of these qualities. So, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
So, someone else? Okay. Then Monday, we will start with the demonic qualities and finish chapter 16 and start the first section also of chapter 17. So, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to see you next week. Have a good weekend. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare